1.3 million people was deported to Auschwitz and 1.1 million died here. Awful, just awful.
Good morning, it's Sunday, it's about 10 o'clock. We have a bag full of lunch and we're going on a day trip.
But it's not that kind of day trip like a sunny day on the beach. We are going to Auschwitz, probably one of the most visited places around Krakow. And we do have mixed feelings about it.
We have visited other concentration camps, but nothing nearly as well preserved as Auschwitz is supposed to be. So it's going to be a rough and tough day. Last tip, ambiance.
Hello.
Hello.
Sandra and Hakan, that's correct?
Yes,
Hello, my name is Alex.
Hi Alex.
Right, thank you.
Marco.
We have just arrived at the site. It took about 1.5 hours to get here from the city center of Krakow. One thing that the driver told us is that you are allowed to bring luggage into the site if it's a small luggage. Otherwise you have to check it in some luggage storage.
The whole area includes actually 3 camps. Auschwitz 1, an administration camp, Auschwitz 2, Birkenau, a concentration and extermination camp, and Auschwitz 3, Monowitz, was a labor camp.
You have to pass through security before entering the camp, where they scan all your luggage and all your belongings. But it only takes about a couple of minutes to pass. So we just finished the first part of the tour at one of Auschwitz 1, which was the main camp. It was about 1.5 hours and it was an audio tour, so it's quite hard to narrate it for you once we went through it. But the tour took us through all the buildings on the area, and primarily the housing buildings. They displayed a lot of leftovers from the prisoners who were incarcerated here. There were tons and tons of shoes, there were kitchen supplies, there were so many things reminding of this tragic event that took place here not that long ago. They also took us through the prison building. We got to see where they executed some of the prisoners that they thought behaved badly. They also displayed different styles of torturing the prisoners, where they would hang them from hooks with the hands tied to the backs, dislocating their shoulders. Execution sites for public executions where they hanged a prisoner who misbehaved. And at the end of the tour we passed by the place where Commander Hess later was executed himself. He was hanged for his part of the crime that took place here in Auschwitz. And next to the place where he was hanged, we walked into an execution chamber, a gas chamber, where they started to experiment with Cyclone B, which was their preferred method of choice to execute the prisoners. This is a fairly small execution site. They didn't use it for that long. As soon as they figured out how to do it, they scaled it up in the next part of the camp that we're going to, the Birkenau. There were also a lot of pictures of inmates who were living and working here at the camp.
1.3 million people was deported to Auschwitz and 1.1 million died here. awful, just awful. We just arrived to Aushwitz Birkenau to have about a 1 hour walk around the area.
So when the prisoners were arriving here at this platform, they were selected if they were fit to work. Then they were sent to the right and to the barracks. And if they weren't fit to work, they were sent to the left. And about 80% were sent to the left, and that pretty much led them straight to the gas chamber. Of course, after they had picked all the belongings from them before entering the camp or the gas chamber.
About 80 people were packed in this kind of cargos. 80 people, no toilets, no windows, no foods, sometimes for days. 20% died in the cargos.
I think it's hard to make out just how huge this area is, but to the right hand side there are chimneys, because it was wooden barracks and the wooden barrack hadn't survived, but the chimneys have survived, so you can get a feel for just how impressive this camp is when it comes to its size. It's absolutely huge.
Heinrich Himmler had a plan to expand the camp to up to 600 buildings. When the camp was liberated, there were about 300 buildings here.
So this whole area here is where they let people in and where they were led to believe that they were going to be showered. They had to undress, and then they were moved into this part that was the actual gas chamber. They could pack 2,000 people in at the same time, and the last part of the area is over here, and that's where they cremated the bodies. They could cremate 1,500 bodies a day in this crematorium, and there are 4 of them here.
After they burned bodies in the crematorium. Pond was only one of the places where the ashes were dropped.
In these barracks, about 700 up to 1,000 women lived and stayed together without any toilets. There were only 2 buckets in each barrack for them to use during the nights. Think about it. There was no heat. They only slept with blankets. They have very little clothes. Terrible conditions. It's been a long day, and I think we're going to spend the rest of the evening reflecting upon what we have experienced.
We were discussing whether we should actually share the content that we did share in this video, and we're not talking about the images, but rather what we are saying when we are explaining what took place, all the atrocities that took place on the concentration camp. But we figured this is an important part of our modern history, and it's most definitely a part of our history that cannot be allowed to repeat itself. And given the times we are living in, with all the right wing moving forward, at least in Europe, it's so important that we tell the story and keep telling the story so that we don't end up in the same horrible situation as we did in the 1940s.
We don't want to get into politics in this channel, but since the war is going on in the neighboring country Ukraine, it's hard not to see the similarities of how one man's thoughts, ideas and hate can cause horrible things.
Let's end this vlog with the words from a very wise man, Ringo Starr. Peace and love.